Okay, we're recording. Here we are, Coach John, Maryville Jiu Jitsu, co-owner and one of the assistant coaches, Wrestling Focus. Professor Joseph Watson, co-owner, Maryville Jiu Jitsu, head instructor, and Professor Samuel Joseph, Buckhead Jiu Jitsu out of Atlanta, Georgia, black belt head instructor.
What's up, guys? Love the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited about this. I met Coach or Professor Joseph, I guess it's been 5 or 6 years ago, and just been impressed with everything he's been doing at Buckhead Academy, Buckhead Jiu Jitsu for all these years. So we wanted to have him on. We got some questions for him today.
Yeah, and I've seen him at tournaments, and that's what we were just talking about before we recorded here. And the Atlanta Open is always one I've been going to, and man, I see his guys, like there's a ton of Buckhead people, and they're all like repping their brand and their gym and stuff, and it seems like their team is together, which is kind of like you see that a little bit, but not so much. So I'm excited to have this conversation as well because I want to create something similar to that. You know.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. You know, stop calling me Professor Joseph, dude. Just call me Sam.
All right. We could do that. All right. Well, let me, based on that comment, Sam, give us a little bit of background, where you came from and your jiu-jitsu lineage and just how you got into jiu-jitsu.
Okay, awesome. And feel free to pop in and ask questions about anything as I go on. My students will tell you I'll talk. I talk at the end of every class, and I'm like, man, you know. But I started jiu-jitsu in '98, and I started in Atlanta. And anybody who started jiu-jitsu back then, you had to be training with Jacare Cavalcante, the Alliance HQ at the time in Atlanta. You know, there's an HQ in Atlanta, and then there's an HQ in Sao Paulo, and with Fabio, and then Paiva, Professor Paiva in Rio. But I started in Atlanta, and Jacare was great, man. And I was there for a little bit over a year. I got my blue belt there, and then I moved to the DC area. And back then, you know, like you were just happy to have jiu-jitsu where you moved. And I was more than lucky to have the Yamasaki Academy there. Under Mario Yamasaki at the time, Fernando came later, moved in, and then Francisco Neto as well. But I moved there as a blue belt, and it was awesome. They'd been established a little bit before Alliance had. So when I left Alliance Atlanta, we had only blue belts on the mat. Like back in the day, there were only blue belts, and we were like, man, blue belt's like a black belt. I fought MMA and won as a blue belt. You know, you didn't see if somebody came in with a purple belt, man, you were like, they were doing magic stuff. You know what I mean? And jiu-jitsu was so closely tied to MMA back then. Like there were the only IBJJF tournament in the country was the PAN, you know, and we didn't have the internet like we have it today. So like people were legendary, you know, you'd hear about somebody and then maybe you'd see them once a year at the PAN. You'd have like your one shot to make your reputation. But anyway, so I moved there as a blue belt. And there were purple belts on the mat and different guys I met. It was awesome. And I got the rest of my belts from the Yamasakis. I'm a Yamasaki black belt. And it was awesome, man. But I started with Jacare, and then moved to – and Mario was there first, and then Fernando Yamasaki. They influenced me tremendously. And then Francisco Neto, who's like – I call him like the unofficial Yamasaki. Like he was there. He's one of the heads of the Yamasaki Academy. So it's the two brothers and then Francisco Neto. And no man has had more impact on my jiu-jitsu than Francisco Neto. He was the perfect, you know, like, so Mario and Fernando were never there at the same time, right? So one of them was there, and he was like the perfect number two when he was there. You can't imagine somebody more loyal. You can't imagine, like, that's what you dream of. You know what I mean? And man, he has so much impact on me, and I credit him and the Yamasakis for that because that's the way he would want it, and they had a tremendous impact on me.
Did you have to adjust your style a lot going from like a Jacare to a Yamasaki?
It was a little different. Every academy, it's funny because if you ever watch that show Highlander,
mm-hmm.
All right, so you know how those of you who don't know, Highlander, 400-year-old immortal, and the immortals, they go around, they have swords, and they sense when they're near each other, and they always say there can be only one, and then they fight and take somebody's head, you take their power. But Duncan MacLeod, the main guy, would travel around, and he would learn he would learn sword fighting from a samurai. Then he would learn like a Spanish style. He'd learn different things. And for me, like jiu-jitsu is like that. You go to different academies, especially before the proliferation of techniques on the internet. Now if you do something, John, it's really good, man, like somebody puts it on the internet or you do it at a tournament, it's all over the world in like 2 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, back then, man, you had a little bit more time where you could take advantage of that stuff. Like Keenan would be able to live for years off of what he's doing with the lapel. Now, man, as soon as he does it, like people are deconstructing it and somebody else is posting how to do it,
Like
or
day
how to
trading
defend
now.
it.
You gotta like check it daily.
Yes. So back then, like different schools had different styles. So when I went from Alliance to Yamasaki, man, I did have to adjust a little bit, and I did learn. And then my job moved me. My job moved me to Florida when I was still a brown belt. And I got to train with Pablo Popovich for a year, right? And at that time, man, Pablo was, going back and forth, or he lost to Marcelo Garcia a couple times, and he finally beat him. And that's when I was
jacked. And he was jacked.
Oh, dude. And then, like, he looks like a Greek god, but, man, he and his dad were fantastic, man. Great personality, great sense of humor. You'd think the guy would be a complete jerk, like looking like he does and being that good. Man, I can't say enough positive stuff about the way he carried
I'll buy his workout DVD any day, man. If he comes out with BJJ Fanatics workout DVD, I'm buying it.
He trained so hard, man. But he always trained, like, he only commutes no gi. But he trained with the gi, trained no gi. He was awesome. And then I got to spend a couple of years, and I got my black belt from the Yamasakis, but I got to spend a couple of years with Sean Williams, black belt under Renzo Gracie. And he is a jiu-jitsu encyclopedia. He and Danaher came up together, and, people always talk about how great Danaher is. And I've never met John Danaher, but all I know is that I believe it because Sean Williams was like a jiu-jitsu encyclopedia. He's fantastic. And
he does the commentary for the IBJJFs, right? Like the Worlds and stuff like that.
Yeah, and man, like that's such a natural fit, man. Like, dude, if you have any question, like I tell my students all the time, and there's no ego here. If I had a question right now and Sean was visiting, man, I would sit him down and I would just ask him because I have no doubt he would have the answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, some guys are like that in jiu-jitsu. They just know exactly. They've experienced it. They've seen it.
Yep.
They felt it.
Yep. And he had a way of – he's an encyclopedia, and that – for me, that was his outstanding quality. And all my coaches, all the guys I mentioned, each had outstanding qualities. But from him, man, I saw the value of really embracing the technical side and falling in love with it, like constantly looking for answers, trying to better yourself and the value that could bring to your students.
Yeah. Man, you've been everywhere.
Yeah, kind of like Highlander.
Yeah. So how did Buckhead come about then?
All right, so I moved back to Atlanta for my job, and I was a black belt. And one of my really good friends, Paul Creighton, who's a black belt.
And what were you do? What was your job? You were.
I was in sales, and I was in sales leadership. So I saw.
Sales. Okay.
Yep.
I knew you were a writer, so.
Yeah, so a company called Intercall and Westco, and you know how we're on a Zoom conference now? We sold audio, web, and video conferencing, right? Okay. So when you were like, "Oh, we'll send you a link," I was like, "Yeah, man, I got it." So I moved here, and back then, man, I was able to, if I want to go to a tournament, I'd be like, I'll just buy a last-minute plane ticket. I could fly, I could do whatever, because my job, I had a great job, things were going great. And I was thinking about changing jobs, and I was training at my buddy Paul's gym, Creighton MMA. He's a beautiful school in Suwanee. And I was teaching there like one night a week, and then I was training there. And it's an incredible school. But anyway, I was training with my brother, Derek Cavani, and I said, man, I'm thinking about changing jobs. And he said, well, you could do that, or you could do something I think you'd be great at that I think you'd actually love. You could start a school. And when he tells this story, 2 weeks later, I quit my job and I opened up like Buckhead Jiu Jitsu with no students. So we had like, almost 4,000 square feet, no students. And I was just paying the bills out of my life savings. But it was a little bit more than that, maybe a month. And I did do that. And I started it with no students. And, And that was it, man. And that was 6 years ago.
Yeah. I think you had maybe been open for only less than a year when I met you, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a few months in, and you already had started to build that pretty great group of people in such a short time.
Yeah, I feel really blessed. Yeah, it was about that. I feel really blessed. I mean, I wouldn't have even found the place. My sister was looking at other places. My sister said, "You should go in this area," and I was like, "Huh?" I grew up in Georgia. I know it, and I drove by, and I was like, "Holy crap! I love this area." Went and talked to the landlord and moved in, and man, I feel really blessed that we just have great people in our community. People are always like, "Oh man, but the coach and this or that." Like, dude, I'm just a voice, like one voice. It'd be like, going to the bathroom in the wind, man. Like, you have to have people, that buy into what you're doing, or else it won't take. Like, I could have the best seed in the world, but if I try to plant it on concrete, nothing's gonna happen. You have to plant it in fertile ground. And man, the people that I have in the gym, and they're just multiplying in terms of what they believe in. Like, jiu-jitsu is an individual sport, but it's also a team sport. And when you truly embrace that, then man, like, it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. Man, people will like lift each other up, man, and carry each other up. And that's what I see in our community, man. And I accredit that to the people, at the gym. So yeah, it's pretty. I love what I do.
Yeah, and you're 6 years in now, right?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I know Joe's got some questions. I got one more question before we keep going on, kind of on this same topic here. So you've been at it 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
You've built a pretty good, academy, and you got a good following. You got some guys and girls that have won some big tournaments. Yeah. I think some world champions, right, and some PANS champions.
Masters World Pan.
Masters, yeah. I've trained with some of them. Awesome. Some of them actually stop by our gym when they're in this area.
Thank you for their hospitality too, man.
Yeah. We love having them. So from that 6 years, real quick before we get to the next topic, do's and don'ts, man. Lessons learned. What have you done that you go, wow, I shouldn't have done that? And what have you done that you said, man, I need to do more of this. This works. What do you got in that area?
Well, a couple of things. Like, one, first I'll give like just a little piece of advice. Man, when you start a gym, okay, you budget out, like everybody's going to budget out. You're going to think, oh man, this is how much it'll cost. So I've got this amount, ready, last me for a couple of years or whatever. Multiply that by 3 because stuff happens, man. Like, things happen. The heater goes out. Things happen, dude. Now we're at this coronavirus. Like, things happen. Yeah. And man,
market changes.
Market changes. Somebody decides they want to open up a school like right next to you. Like, things happen, man. And you want to give yourself peace of mind because you're your biggest asset, right? And no matter how good we think we are at hiding the stress, we can't. Like, people sense that. And if your people are plugged into you, which I hope they are, they're gonna sense that, man. So you wanna have as much security as possible. And like the best advice I'll give people, a couple of pieces of advice. The best advice I'll give people is find a couple of mentors. Find a couple of people who have gyms that you want, right? Like, who have the culture you want, who have the results you want. Like, you talked, John, and you asked about, you alluded to our culture, and you alluded to like results, like some competition results. And we're not a competition school, but competition has played a huge part in my jiu-jitsu journey. So I talk about it a lot. I like it. And I encourage people to compete. One of my guys or girls, because man, like, men and women are equal, dude. Like, we have, man, and sometimes you go to gyms or whatever, and some people have different philosophies on that, man. I believe men and women are equal. And I love seeing our women thrive. I love seeing our men thrive. It's equal for me. But like, if somebody loses a match, dude, if the worst thing that ever happens to you is that you lose at a jiu-jitsu tournament, you've had a pretty good life. That doesn't mean you don't want to win. Man, you want to go hard. You want to win. And I'll be upset that you didn't win, but I'm not upset at you. And then we'll go back. If you don't like the result, you go back, you train, you sign up for the next one, and let's go get it together. Do you know what I mean? Right? Yeah. Man, jiu-jitsu is a tool, or tournaments are a tool to help you along your jiu-jitsu journey. You know, if what you're focused on is winning a piece of fake gold, like that's the pinnacle, that's the mountaintop, man, good luck. You know, like jiu-jitsu is not going to be as fun for you as I think, you know, it could be. But I would say get some mentors that you have a good relationship with. And I define a good relationship as that you guys can talk, right, regularly.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah, of course.
Was Creighton Martial Arts one of those like gyms that you were aiming towards, or did you have a gym in mind, or had you visited one in the past that like was kind of your mentor and what you wanted to model your gym after?
Well, it's funny. So I was about to say, like, Paul Creighton was one of my mentors. Like, Paul and I, if you jump on our social media, it looks like we just go at each other. People think we don't like.
You're always making fun of his height.
Yeah, but he was absolutely one of my mentors. They have an absolutely great environment. They have people who do really well, you know, in tournaments, international tournaments, local tournaments. Yes, so he was one of my mentors. We literally talked every day for the first 2.5, 3 years. And not because he needed to, right? You know, he's been open for 15 years. He has a tremendously successful academy. And then there are others, like, you know, I used to talk to David Jacobs a lot, Derek Cavani a lot, Dirty Gi Marketing. But those guys really, really helped me. But Paul, in terms of a gym that I wanted to model, right? He's 100%. You know, and I'm not shy about that. I do, like, when people walk up to me and they say, hey, are you under Paul? I'm like, dude, if you ask me that again, I'm going to punch you right in the tank. Not under Paul, right? But he's one of my best friends. He's my mentor. I was honored, actually, a couple of months ago to give his speech for his induction into the NFC Hall of Fame. And then they surprised me. They inducted me too. And I was totally surprised, man. But I was honored to do that because he's been my friend for so long, and he's my mentor. So
yeah, cool.
So I would say mentor, that'd be number one. And then two, man, it's not enough to just be good at jiu-jitsu, right? You have to invest in, you know, and I was blessed that I came from a sales background, and 70% of what I did was doing presentations. And then I had the opportunity to teach at the Yamasaki Academy, to teach at Creighton MMA. So I had a long time to kind of work on my own teaching style, right? But like something that I was lacking, that a lot of people are lacking, is getting, in today's age, getting the social media, getting the SEO, getting that stuff right. And Derek Cavani's helped me a ton with that, with Dirty Gi Marketing. And I tell anybody who would ask, I'm like, hey, man, you have to, whether it's Dirty Gi Marketing or it's somebody else, you have to have somebody who can help you with that part of it. Because when I was growing up, I'm a lot older than you guys. When I was growing up, man, you drive around, you look in the phone book, you look in the newspaper. Now people are jumping online or their phones, and you have to be able to connect with people in that way, or else, man, somebody else will. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Marketing and like creating a brand, I think, is like huge in jiu-jitsu, you know?
100%.
See with the athletes, you see with the schools, I think that's the game.
Yep, 100%. I agree 100%.
So have you done anything that you look back and say, man, I shouldn't have done that?
Yeah, yes, of course. You know, I mean, they say smart people learn from their own mistakes. Wise people learn from others' mistakes. And having Paul as a mentor, I was able to avoid a lot of mistakes, but you still make some. And some aren't as much mistakes as there are. You learn how you want to run your gym, right? You know, like Johnathan, man, I know you're a family man. You got an incredible family. I've been, you know, fortunate enough to meet your wife and your kids. And, you know, I'm happy every time they hit like, or I get to hit like on your stuff. Man, it's awesome. But it's like, you know, you have your family, you raise your family, and you learn stuff like, well, this is how my dad did, this is how my mom did, this is how I want to do it. And I don't have a family. I have, well, you know, I don't have a wife or kids or anything like that. I have my gym. And there were things that I did. So, for example, like now we're about 6 years in, and I've got 2 black belts, or 3 black belts, well, 2 black belts that I've given, Darren Roberts and Kenneth Young. And they both moved to me as brown belts, but like you'd never be able to tell. Like it's like they came up under me day one because there's such alignment. And then Derek Cavani is a black belt. I gave him his first and second degree, but he got his black belt from Alliance. But again, like the alignment is there. And I've been really fortunate in that people who have moved in, whether they've been blue belts, purple belts, brown belts, a lot of them have said, you know what, man, I'm in alignment at a macro level with your philosophy. Do you know what I mean? Like with what you're trying to accomplish, right? And I think that's really important. But like, I think as a gym owner, and I watch a podcast with Jacqueline, and he talked about this. He talked about like alignment, like giving somebody their black belt. Man, I've got guys now who are about to get their brown belts who started with me as white belts. I'm not really giving anything away, like, you know, about to get their brown belts, people coming up under me. And like the way we do stuff at Buckhead Jiu Jitsu is just ingrained in them, you know, in terms of philosophy. Like sometimes in the gym, they'll say stuff and I'm like, man, you're more me than me. Do you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like their philosophy. Not that like I'm this jiu-jitsu thought leader or anything like that, but like if I come to your house and you're like, hey man, we don't wear shoes in my house. I'm like, okay, I have two choices. Either I take off my shoes or I'm not really going to be welcomed in your house. Do you know what I mean? Right? It's neither right nor wrong. It's just the way that it is there. And you could have a dozen different reasons for that, but you don't have to give them to me. It's your house. Do you know what I'm saying? Right? And that's the way I look at when I look at jiu-jitsu, especially today, when there's so many places that people can go. I feel like coaches, man, you communicate your philosophy from a macro level. I try to articulate and communicate why I feel the ways that I do. And it allows people to thrive in that environment, or it lets them know, hey, man, I don't really buy into that. I'd like to go someplace else. Do you know what I mean? And if I had to do it over again, I would probably be even more vocal, you know, in terms of what my philosophy is from a macro level, like what my expectations are in order for people to progress, what my expectations are in order for me to consider people leaders, you know, to look for them for leadership positions, things like that. Because, man, then people can make an informed choice as to if they want to be a part of it or not. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. What's really interesting about all this is I've only trained at, you know, your place a few times when I've been in Atlanta and any chance I get when I'm down there. But Coach or Professor Joe and I, we've talked, I mean, we talk 5 times a day, you know, and so much of our conversations are about the philosophy of the academy, even more than the techniques or the day-to-day, like, you know, are we going to get a new mat? Are we going to those things matter, but the philosophy of the academy is really what we talk about, I would say, most of the time, right, Joe?
Yeah, I would say that's the biggest differentiator of gyms. You know, everybody can have like this equipment, that equipment, but look at have you seen Andrew Wilt's academy, the Pedigo guys?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, they're training in a freaking, you know, there's like raccoons coming out of the thing, but everybody knows their culture. Like, you know what you're getting yourself into. Like, if I'm going to train there, I'm going to be drinking water all day long, be prepared to train. Like, you know, you're going to go hard. And just like Gracie Academy, like Henner and Hito and Gracie, like, you know what to expect from them. Like, your culture is like the biggest thing over facilities, over everything, you know?
Dude, 100%. And the cool thing, like what you just mentioned, you just talked about 2 totally different environments with respect, right? With respect. And like, I don't think you like, so people are like, oh man, jiu-jitsu can be so cultish or this or that. Dude, we have open doors. People can come in and train. My guys can go anywhere they want to train. Like, I think you can have team pride, right? Like, you guys obviously have pride in what you're building there, which is awesome. But you just talked about with respect a couple of, like, I watched that too. What I took from the Pedigo from their training, I loved how tight they were, right?
Yeah,
like
I thought that was really cool.
I love that, right? You know, like, we had one of our guys who compete against one of their guys a few times, and I think they were 2-2. My guy Joey Siako, he's a purple belt now, and he competed against Jacob, maybe Brooks is the last name. They competed. They went like they beat each other a couple of times, and it's like we'd see them, and then one of my other guys fought him, and you know, we'd be like, all right, man, we're going to go handle our business. But we watch that and we're like, oh man, very cool. You know, like, you can have team pride. They have team pride. It's like 2 lawyers. You advocate as hard as you can, and then you shake hands afterwards and you respect what they're doing. And then, man, you go do you. Do you know what I mean? You know, you learn from what other people are doing, and then you come back home and you apply it. You know what I mean? I think you can have team pride, but be respectful, be friends, have relationships. man, I think team pride only enhances the jiu-jitsu experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody shares that view, but I agree with you. I share that view as well, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Joe,
don't think everybody shares that view.
No. Joe, I think you might have had maybe one more question about Sam's Academy, or.
Oh yeah. I had another question. So I was watching a jiu-jitsu podcast with the guy Jiu Jitsu. You ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Man, he's got a huge following on YouTube. You guys should check him out. He's got like 300,000 subscribers or something. But he had an interesting topic the other day, and you kind of mentioned it earlier with you guys have a lot of women training in your gym. What are your views? Two-part question, really. Now that I heard you talk about it, one, how do you have so many women training? Because we've been trying to push that hard since the beginning, but it's tough, you know, at least for us. And then the other question is, what do you think about men and women rolling together? How do you mitigate problems? Do you think it's beneficial? I think it's beneficial, and I'm sure you have that same philosophy as well. But like, basically, how have you created that atmosphere?
Well, I'll try to attack it, those questions from a couple of different perspectives that'll give you a view of the way that I look at it. Well, the company that I worked for, Intercall, you know, when I was there, I think our number 70% of our on the sales side were women, right? So you were competing. Sales is highly competitive, and man, like if you got your butt kicked, it didn't matter if it was a man or woman doing it. Your butt was kicked the same. Do you know what I mean? You know, so I always just approached it as, you know, women. I've reported to men. I've reported to women. I've mentored men. I've mentored women. It's just like, man, we have an equal relationship. And I think like step one is you have to sincerely feel that way, right? Because people can sense BS. And if you don't sincerely feel that way, you know, it doesn't matter what else you do, you know. And yes, like I do think there's a lot of value in men and women training together. Two of my favorite training partners over the past couple of years have been a young lady I have, Ruth Hu. She's like a 4-time Pan champ, Medal Masters Worlds Asian champ. A woman named Hannah Norcross, who moved, and she was with us. She moved to New Mexico, but she was with us for a while. And both those women had beautiful jiu-jitsu and a ton of pressure. And they were two of my favorite training partners because their movement was essentially perfect, right? So if I gave them a head start, I knew that my movement had to be perfect too, right? And I was stronger than them. So I just had to keep myself from using that physical advantage. And they made me so much better.
Can I interject right here real quick? Yeah. So I can, just to affirm what you're saying here, you know, my wife trains and she's my main training partner. So it's her and Coach Joe are my main training partners. And I made an argument not that long ago on Facebook, I think it was, or Instagram, that if you want to be with the most technical person in the room, find the girl. Find the girl that has a little bit of color on her belt. Maybe she's been around a little bit, purple, you know, whatever. Find her. And maybe it's a blue belt, but find that girl. You want to see technique? Find her, because she has to have it.
She has to have it.
She's not going to be as big usually or as strong. I mean, you know, on average, right? So they rely on technique, and they're crisp. They're tuned. I mean, my wife's guard is as good as any guard in our gym. And I'll stand by that, not because she's my wife, because it's just true. And so it's made my guard passing better because I have to pass her spider guard without trying to just smash her. So the interjection I want to – what's that?
It has to be, because she doesn't have the physical advantage. It's very much like back in the day before there were, you know, any women in the gym, you'd go find a smaller guy, right? Because he didn't have the physical advantage. Do you know what I mean? You know, so he had to have really articulate legs. He had to, you know, take what, you know.
I like that, articulate legs. I'm going to steal that.
Oh, man, yeah. You know,
that's why Samuel Braga's guard is what it is. I mean, you know,
he's not a huge guy.
He trained up in Brazil weighing, you know, 95 pounds. Of course his guard's got to be good. And that's why, you know, he's perfected the bare ball the way he has.
So one question I have, I guess, to kind of follow up on this is, I think we all three agree there's a huge benefit of it. But there are those guys in the gym that you don't necessarily want rolling with a 115-pound female.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's that they can't control it. Sometimes it's an ego issue. Sometimes it's just they don't have control of their own body, because like as you progress in rank, you have more control over your own
You have
body.
more control.
But how, as the instructor, do you just always – do you, like, when rolls are going on, do you not roll and then watch everybody else? Do you just talk to the girls after class? How do you kind of –
Well, I do a couple of things. So and this goes more macro, and I'll bring it micro. So I pair up every roll, like when I'm teaching, right? So I either roll, like if I have a couple of hundred students now, and, I can't roll with everybody all the time. I mean, sometimes people forget how old I am because I'm so pretty, but, plus there's just too many. But I either roll with or I've watched everybody, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people, like you said, they just don't have the control yet. So I pair people up, right? So one, I will pair up. And you might be like, well, do you just pair the women with the women? No. I pair women with bigger guys, with women, with smaller guys. But like I try to see, I was talking to one of and I think she visited your gym, Maisie Thompson, about this before. Yeah. Maisie's medaled the Masters World. She's an IBJJF champion. She's maybe 110, 15 pounds, right? Yeah. Sometimes I'll pair her up. I'll roll with her, or I'll pair her up with a guy who's a little bit more explosive. And she trusts me enough. She says, well, I know you're doing that for a reason. Right? And I'll watch, sometimes I'll watch a little more closely, or I'll have watched that guy and I'll say, man, that guy's explosive, but he has enough control not to hurt Maisie. And I want Maisie to work to be able to control somebody who's got that explosive game. Right? Mm-hmm. Or I will pair her up with, somebody who's more her size, whether they be guy or girl. So like I pair people up. I watch people so I can make the appropriate pairings, and I pair people up with purpose, right? But there has to be trust. Like she has to trust, like they have to trust me as a coach. That doesn't mean I'm perfect or I won't make a mistake. But if I make a mistake, or if I see somebody that's maybe a little too rough, or I thought Maisie or somebody could handle something and they couldn't, then I won't pair them up again, right? Yeah. And I might have a talk with that person, say, hey man, I want you to use a little bit more control here. And this is why you should use that control. Not because, oh, she's small. No. It's because, dude, if I'm 155 pounds or so, if I rolled with a dude that was 110 pounds, man, I could just throw him around. I'm a pretty strong guy. But what am I going to get out of that? Mm-hmm. I have an opportunity there to work against more articulate, more flexible legs, or somebody who's faster than me. Now we both benefit. So I'll talk to them about how they benefit. Plus, at a macro level, people at our gym understand that it's not just about you, it's about your training partner too. So ask yourself what you can get out of it. And we have a saying at our gym, I'm responsible for my partner's safety as well as my safety, right? So like a purple belt at my gym isn't going to impress me because they go tap a blue belt like 15 times. It's like, okay, great. You can kick his ass, right? But you're a purple belt. You're supposed to, dude, go, there's a tournament next month. Go compete. Go tap everybody there, right? I'd rather see, that doesn't mean we don't go hard, right? But man, if I guillotine you twice, I don't need to guillotine you 8 more times. Let me work in a position you're really good at, and then we can go hard. Do you know what I mean? Let me work on my back retention. Let me work on my guard passing because you have a really good guard. And let me make sure that you come out of it and you're safe and you got something out of the roll as well, right? So that is our philosophy that's communicated. And if you go outside of that in our gym, man, then you stand out like a sore thumb. So those things combined with the fact that at our gym, man, there is no like, oh, but she's a girl, or, oh, but she's a woman, or, oh, that was the woman's. No, man, we're all equals, right? And if you don't buy into that, man, there are probably a few women at our gym that are going to kick your butt, right? If you don't buy into that, then even if you maybe can beat them, maybe you're athletic, maybe you're strong, man, it's just not cool. Like I don't buy into that. The people at our gym don't buy into that. Man, you have to respect your training partners, man, woman, white belt, blue belt, purple belt, blah, blah. We'll walk into our gym, and this sounds like it's different, but it kind of goes along the same lines. If I go into the gym, if we were open tonight, I joke around. I'll tease somebody. right? If a purple belt hits me with a zinger, I'm not like, how dare you? I'm a black belt. Man, I laugh. We all laugh. We have a good time. Why? Because, man, there's respecting your coaches, respecting the mat, respecting your teammates. But if I'm joking, man, like that's affection. That's not disrespect. Do you know what I mean? As long as I'm not in the middle of teaching, right? You know, so where there's that respect, I let people know that I expect you to always have that respect, right? So to summarize, like if you came to the gym tonight and we were open, which we're not because of the coronavirus, and there were 10 women on the mat, you might be like, well, they're probably all in a circle, like drilling with each other during open mat. It's as common to see a woman grab a guy and them to be drilling when there are a few women over to the side and a few men, like people in their mix, because we're all equal, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And that's, once you establish that as the norm, over time, when women and smaller guys and other people come in, big guys have an issue too. Nobody wants to roll with them. You know, sometimes they're scared. But like when they come in and they see, oh, wow, I'm being treated equally here. I have the opportunity to thrive if I put in the work. Over time, it starts to grow.
That makes sense. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Oh, and one more thing. Sorry. One more thing. I believe, like, as the coach, I believe it's important to recognize the women just like you recognize the men, right? Like in terms of wins and stuff. So, for example, a couple of years ago, the first people from Buckhead Jiu Jitsu, I'd won the Pan before, but that was before we had Buckhead Jiu Jitsu. We had two of my purple belts, homegirl Matt Shan and Ruth Yu, both won the Pan. Right? Ruth won double gold, Matt won gold. Those were our first IBJJF majors from our gym, right? If I come back as the head coach and made a big deal about Matt because it was the men's division and kind of didn't make a big deal about Ruth or treated her differently, right? Then people would see it and they'd be like, man, I call BS. I absolutely do not do that. Sometimes, you know, I talk about it. I'm like, Ruth, you're a leader in our gym. People are like, oh, man, Ruth is a great leader for the women and role model for the women. I'm like, no. She's just, I acknowledge, right, that women will gravitate towards her, right? And I think representation is important. But I always make it a point to say, yes, but she's just a leader, period, right? You know, just like a guy. And when you do that over time, man, I think that those seeds bear fruit.
So you would say it's okay to represent a certain group, but you lead everyone.
Yes, 100%, right? Like, so somebody comes into my gym and says, hey, man, I think it's really cool. You know, I'm black. If they look at me and they're like, I think it's really cool that you're black and you're, you know, man, I maybe want to be here. That's great, man. That's great. But we're all together. Like, I'm not mad at you. It's great, but we're all together.
You're not just the leader of the black jiu-jitsu guys.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Or
you're a leader of the bald jiu-jitsu guys too.
Or bald, right? You know, when
that.
people would come in, we had a woman black belt training with us for a little while. There was some stuff. There was a split with her team. She was training with us for a while, and then she went back to her team, Victoria Hudson Boudreau. She was fantastic, right? And people were like, oh, man, I thought it was great that the women could see a black belt. And, you know, she just trained. She was fantastic, and we still have a great relationship. But she wasn't just the female black belt. She was a black belt. I was like, no, man, you have to treat her the same way you treat me because she's earned that respect. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's earned that right, you know, but I also acknowledge that having that representation, it had a tremendous impact on the ladies at our gym, you know, and I love to highlight her and put her out there because I knew that representation mattered, especially for the women in our gym.
Yeah. I would love to see Jenna as she continues to advance through the ranks. She would be a representation of the female jiu-jitsu, but not just a leader of female jiu-jitsu, because her technique is on the you know, whether you're female or male, little kid, teenager or adult, technique is technique, man. How good is it? You know, and we're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing that today. There's teenagers or young 20-year-olds like Micah Gavau, I mean, his technique is just unbelievable. I mean, he's a purple belt kid, And
Yeah.
he has technique that's just, it's mind blowing, really. You know,
Well, their bodies, it's like their bodies are, you know, that Bane in The Dark Knight Rises is like, you merely adopted the dark. I was born into it. Like, we merely adopted jiu-jitsu, dude. These kids are being born into it, right?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
I will say this, you know, the cool thing about coming up when I came up was there was such a focus on the fundamentals. And when you watch, man, if you build your game on the fundamentals, man, you're always in the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, man, I'm all about modern jiu-jitsu, the inversion game, man. And you guys, I know you guys are with Samuel Braga, Pressa Braga, but man, like, there's just, I think there's beautiful symmetry. Like, you don't have to have one or the other. You can have it all. But some of these kids, like the stuff that they can do and the stuff that they see and the way their bodies are adapted to it, it's an exciting time, man. And I love being able to, like, we have some kids, man. I can't wait for them to come to adult class and start knotting up some of the adults, man.
Yeah.
So good, man.
Yeah. Well, I was actually about to ask you a little bit of a question that's kind of on another topic, but before I get to that, because of where we're going right here, I know Joe wanted to ask about techniques you're working on, right, Joseph?
Yeah, I had just a couple quick questions for both you guys, and you guys can answer this. Like, if you want to just hit them real quick, and then you can expand on it, whatever you want to do. But my question for both y'all is, what technique, drill, position are you currently obsessed with?
You want me to go first? Okay, so yeah. Actually, right now it's so funny, man, because I think jiu-jitsu is circular. You know what I mean? Like, you solve one problem and then another one comes up, right? And so right now, what I'm working on, I just did a video for some of our guys in our private Facebook group, is using double unders to combat like really flexible guards, right? Because, like, man, guys now are getting
Johnathan rolling with me every time. It's my existence right there.
Well, because people's legs are so articulate now that you go to control their legs to pass, and they'll bring their knees like back past their ears with strong legs that you guys were talking about earlier, you know, training with women and with smaller guys. They're so flexible. And now, like, people are seeing that. Like Mikey Musumeci, how do you freaking pass his guard, man? He's like a little monkey. The knees go past and the legs are strong. So I've been working on combinations using double unders. You go double unders, people go heavy with their legs. So they're bringing their legs to you to control. You know what I mean? Yeah. So different combinations, you know, to deal with flexible guards. You know, that's what we're working on a lot now.
That's awesome. And yeah, that's something that we definitely I need to keep working on. I'm always playing double unders with Joe, because I'm trying to, you know, deal with his guard and Samuel's guard, which at this point there's not a lot of dealing that goes on.
That's where your intuition takes you, though. In that,
it is. I mean, double unders has really been one of the few ways that I can combat the awesome guards that I experienced through Samuel's gym, because, you know, he sets the tone, right? So Samuel is a guard guy, and so not just Berimbolo, but just guard in general, and he set the tone. And so his proteges, such as Joe and Juanito and some of the other guys I train with, the Griffin brothers, their guards are just fantastic because they've been modeling their game after Samuel's, even if it's a little different in certain ways. So I'm more of a passer. You know, I'm a wrestler turned jiu-jitsu, right? So I'm a angle cutting, you know, takedown, bullfighting type guy. And dealing with these guys with these guards, you know, I've had to find ways to combat, you know, their legs basically. And double unders is one of the few ways that you can do that.
Well, you can go to double unders and you can use it to transition to over under. You can use it to transition to like lazy leg drag. You can use it to transition to attack, you know, to attack back takes. Like, it can be pretty versatile, especially when combined with modern jiu-jitsu. Right? Like, I go to double unders and I try to stagger you, push back, man. I dive, man, and I can go to, like, you know, lazy leg drag. You know, you defend the leg drag, man. I can try to, you know, like, what do you call it? Tie up your legs to try to take your back. There are a lot of things that you can start to do, which is that's the other thing about jiu-jitsu. It evolves so much that you never stop learning if you don't want to
Yeah.
stop learning. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
We've told our students, like, I can't wait for the day that our students, talking about kids too, come to me and say, hey, let me show you this technique I've created.
Yep.
Because if our students are in creation mode,
Yeah.
they're going to stay loving it. Right. And that's really where we should be. We should be giving the students, I tell them this way, jiu-jitsu, much like science, there's some laws, right?
Mhm.
There's some fundamental laws that you don't need to break.
Yes.
Just like the importance of grips, angles, levels, elbows in, feet high. There's laws.
Right.
Outside of those laws, we're scientists doing experiments and learning new things. And there's so many variables. We're constantly experimenting and learning. So I want my students to take those laws and learn them. And then from there, build a game. Right.
Well,
and so I give you a concept and then you run with it.
Yep. 100%. And one thing that I've seen that you guys both have done, looking from here, watching you guys, is you guys are stimulating the imagination of your students, following the lead of your professor, Professor Braga, because you guys get inspired by, man, what he's done, how he's competed, how he's continued to, put himself out there from time to time. And you guys both compete. Like, I've watched both of you, compete. And, man, your students, they want you to win, right? But, man, like, I got to tell you, dude, like, when I think of Francisco Neto, I remember going to watch him compete. And I wanted him to win. But, man, if he lost, I remember he lost to BJ Penn once. Or, no, sorry, they both got this DQ'd. He lost another match. I didn't care. I was just so inspired that he went and he was competing at a high level. And that made me want to go back and get in the lab and go compete and then put myself out there. And then I got good at certain positions, and then I got my black belt. And then people are like, oh, man, teach me, where did you get this? Well, my coach planted a seed and, I've gotten 1,000 repetitions in this position. And you guys do a great job of that, like putting yourself out there, rolling with your students, rolling consistently, competing from time to time, or if I had that. I think that's so important. And it goes back to not having a competition school, but talking about the importance of competition, right? And how it can benefit your jiu-jitsu. Do you know what I mean? Because you never know. You guys could have a kid right now, 16, 17, not really taking jiu-jitsu that seriously, who decides he wants to be or she wants to be great. And they could be great. And they come up to you and they say, coach, professor, you inspired me so much doing that tournament. You're like, I lost, or I lost in the final. They're like, but just you being out there, man, I was so proud. And man, thank you so much. And you're just like, holy crap, I had no idea I had that much impact,
Yeah, yeah. And we've tried to tell our students, similar to what you've said, a tournament or a competition is like taking a test at school. So you study, you take a test, and then you go, I need to work on, exponents, because that part of my math isn't that great. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to study exponents, or I'm going to study multiplication or whatever. Yes. I'm doing pretty well with adding and subtracting, but my multiplication is struggling. So I'm going to work on it. And then you work on it, and then you go to another tournament, and it's like taking another test. The great thing about jiu-jitsu, though, is the tests are endless. You can always take them, whether it's at a tournament or in the gym rolling, and you'll never ultimately beat it. It's like a video game that you can always level up, but you can never ultimately beat. Because when we beat a video game, what do? We trade it in and get another game. It's not fun anymore. Jiu-jitsu, we can always level up. And the last thing we say in this line is stop competing against your friends. It's not a competition against your friends. If I can't pass Coach Joe's guard, it's not Coach Joe that's beating me. It's his guard is beating my passing. So what do I need to do? Work on my passing. So it's I'm trying to defeat jiu-jitsu, not Coach Joe, right? It's his jiu-jitsu that I'm working against, or anyone's jiu-jitsu. And that's been a game changer for us to change our mentality. And like you said, a philosophy set it. We want to set that philosophy, that tone, so that everyone is, while our styles may be different, our philosophy is generally the same.
Dude, to add to your philosophy, and where there's agreement there. It's not just your passing versus Joe's guard, right? It's, man, better for you to have that problem in the gym with your teammate, right? Than to have it at some super fight or some tournament. Because now you have time to try to solve that problem, right? Then you go to the tournament, you're like, I can deal with this because of Joe. Do you know what I mean? Like, Joe is your teammate. So him having that guard that's difficult for you to pass or giving you that problem that you can't solve, man, is actually like a gift he's giving to you to help your jiu-jitsu. So when you want to go, like when we go compete, we want to win, whether it's a super fight or the tournament, right? So if Joe is making it difficult for you to pass and you have to solve that problem, he's making you better so that you, when you go out and you can compete, when you're truly trying to win, right? He's done everything he can to help you win. I've had students of mine. I remember one time, one of my students, Mark Jabali, he's this guy, he's a purple belt under me. He's come up under me. Super quiet guy, but so sincere, right? Like I really believe one of the reasons he still lives in Atlanta is because of the gym, like the main reason, but I love this guy. But anyway, he won this tournament. He was, I think it was a new breed or whatever. And he won it sweeping a guy a few times. Like, you know, he swept a guy, they'd go out of bounds, they'd come back, he'd pull again, he swept. And he comes out and the first thing he did, I think that was one of the first tournaments he won or the first one he won at Blue Belt. He points at this guy who didn't compete and he said, I won because of you, because of what you made it so hard for me at the gym. And that guy was so pumped and they like smacked each other and hugged it out. And anybody who knows me at tournaments, man, I get rolling. I start smacking, you know, like, I get like all like intense. I start sweating, man, because like I just want people to do well. And I couldn't be more proud. Huh?
Your voice is out by the end of the day. You're dead.
100%.
Yeah.
But
and what's
along the lines of what you said.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. What's crazy is so these calls are supposed to be limited to 40 minutes, but they gave us an extension. I just saw it pop up, and I think it's because we're just having such a great conversation. They're like, "Hey, let these guys keep going." We won't go much longer, but real quick to answer your question before we go to like the closing part here, Joe, the things I'm working on. So I'm kind of working on 3 things right now. One, I'm always trying to make my guard better, and the reason why is because it's not natural. Nothing is real natural, but it's the least natural for me because I'm a takedown guy. I'm a top guy. I'm a wrestler turned jiu-jitsu. And I'm around guys who are just great with their guard, and I want to be like them, you know? So I'm working on my guard all the time. I've been studying Leandro Lo a lot in his older game. Not as much as passing now. I used to study his passing because I love to pass the guard. Now I'm studying more of his – like his matrix guard, he calls it, where he does like a X guard and he does like some you know, he puts the foot in the bicep and he plays this whole game. And I've been kind of
the idea of studying an old school guy, man. It reminds me of how football players study like Deion Sanders or something like that.
Yeah.
There's always going to be benefit to that because everybody wants to study the new stuff, but it's important to study those old.
And remember, it's circular, right?
Circular, right. Yeah. So I'm studying like old Leandro Lo and playing with that guard a little bit. And then on my passing, what I'm doing, I've always been kind of a bullfighter, throw by, Leandro Lo style.
Yeah.
Angle cutting. But guys are playing so much lapel guard now and lasso. And so you can't cut angles, right? Like he's one of them. So it's very difficult to cut an angle with a lasso or a lapel guard. Worm guard, something like that. So what I'm doing is I'm learning how to basically get some distance or kind of stretch them out a little bit and tie their legs up, similar to a wrestler who ties up legs for leg lacing for freestyle back points. So what I do is I'm trying to systemize disengagement enough to get their feet on the mat, because a lapel guard loses its effectiveness if their feet are down, right? They like to keep their feet up while they have you wrap. So I bring his feet down. I'm trying to tie up his legs and start to then grind pass while I keep those legs locked, sort of like a wrestler tying up legs. So that's something I'm playing with. And then the last thing I'm working on, Joe, is, you know, for 6 years, I've been trying to take wrestling takedowns especially and modify them to make them work for jiu-jitsu in the gi. In no gi, it's a little bit easier to transition. In the gi, it changes a lot. Yeah. So I've been trying to kind of modify and take the takedowns that I love so much and modify them enough to make them work in wrestling. And one thing that I just am fascinated with right now, obsessed with, is the front headlock series. Because if I can bait you into the front headlock, I've got loop chokes, guillotines, darces, take the back, bow and arrow chokes, just tons of things. So right now I get my wife on the mats and I just get her in a front headlock and I just start going through all these possibilities. So that's really what I'm doing. Yeah. So I put an old video online. So we're watching some I don't know. We watch some old Rafa Mendez videos or Samuel Braga videos or whoever. And then we take turns. So my kids get a couple of minutes on the mat, and then Jenna and I get a couple of minutes on the mat, and we just play around with things. And she's a spider guard lasso player, so she works that, and I work on the front headlock right now. So that's kind of my three things.
That's cool.
Yeah. So go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say I just had one more quick one.
Go ahead.
If you guys don't mind, for both y'all, and you can answer this one quick if you want. A new student walks in the gym first day. How long until you let them roll? First day? First week?
So this is where so I have a saying, man, I didn't open up a jiu-jitsu gym because I didn't like being there. Like I don't really I'm there all the time. You know, like I have the two guys I get black belts, Darren Roberts, Kenneth Yoon. They take my Friday night class, you know, when we're Are you back?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What happened?
Okay. I don't know, man. Something just happened and it dropped out.
Okay. You guys
Joe, you back?
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. I don't know what happened. It just cut out.
That's okay.
Yep.
Where did it cut out?
You just started to answer the question about
okay. Like when people spar.
when you let the person roll.
Yeah. Okay. So when people come in, if they don't have any grappling background at all, I have them take 2 intro classes before taking regular class, right? And then if they don't have any grappling, if they're, you know, not overly athletic or whatever, if they are, I might let them spar if they ask, but I pair them up with somebody who can protect them and themselves. And if not, then I say, hey, look, guys, sparring isn't about kicking ass. It's like learning a language, right? You have your classroom work that you do, but how did you really learn the language? You immerse yourself in it, right? Yeah. So you get a buddy who's taking French too. You guys go to lunch and all you do is speak French, right? Or you go to the store and all you do is speak French if you're out of the country, right? So I tell them, I'm like, that's what sparring is like. So if you approach it and don't focus on what you don't know, right? Just do what you do. You know, try to get around the legs when you're on top. When you're on bottom, don't let them get around your legs, right? And then go from there. If you're in a position that you're not sure about, tap. And then, man, I let them go. So typically if they're brand new, I have them watch 1 or 2 classes of sparring, and then I have them do it with that explanation and expectation. And it's worked really well in bringing people along. And the last
this is something I'm always curious about. It's been like an obsession of mine lately because I've been going to different gyms and different people approach it differently. Yeah. And I have seen if you let the guy spar on the very first day, a lot of times it's a disaster, man. For a lot of people, but it can be good too. On my first class, I was a real competitive guy. I wanted to spar. I asked the instructor after class, I was like, hey man, can I spar? And he let me spar. So I'm like, I'm torn between what to do sometimes.
Well, setting the expectation and then like pairing them up, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is going back to something you said earlier in the conversation, you pair everyone up for the roles, right? And so I think if you're always doing that, if you're always, pairing people up, then you, in a sense, kind of have already taken care of that. I think that's one thing we've learned.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. That was the main – I was just interested to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
Let me toss in one more thing with that, actually. One of the pieces of feedback that I get most often from people who've come up, whether they've been with me for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years, is that especially the people over the past 3 years or so, because when I first opened up, I mean, you remember, John, I was there, so I could roll with all 8 people on the mat. Well, now we have 40 people on the mat. You know what I mean? But the cool thing is that our white belts interact with, our black belts and our brown belts and our purple belts. I don't separate, and they benefit so much from that interaction. I'll pair people up. So I might take one of my senior purple belts, Winthorpe, who's Asian champion. And I might put him with a guy who's maybe 6 months in, right? And Winthorpe knows my he's great. He's yoked and strong. Yeah. And I can put him with anybody. And he will flow and he'll move. And they get something out of that. And it sparks their imagination and stuff. So not only do I encourage people to spar pretty soon, actually, right? I pair them up to protect their experience, right? But I also continue that as their white belt. Do you know what I mean? Man, if I roll with a white belt now, right before we closed the coronavirus, I had multiple white belts try to berimbolo me. You know what I mean? Sometimes back in the day, you would roll with your coach and you're just super tight because, my coach knows so much more than me. Dude, my white belts try to berimbolo me. They try to, and I laugh. I'm like, dude, man, that's good try. But they're trying to, Maisie and I were flow rolling. You guys know Maisie. Yeah. We were flow. She's 115 pounds. She's so tough though. We're flow rolling. And then she just tried to slap on a triangle. And I was like, Maisie, it's funny, man. I love that because I want them to be creative. I want to spark that imagination and creativity. And I think it starts from the very beginning, and you really build that, as their white belts.
That's cool.
That's awesome. Well, I tell you, I was gonna talk to you a little bit about modern jiu-jitsu and the social media game and all that sort of thing. But we've been going for an hour now, so I might save that for session 2 because I think this was so much fun. I think we may try to do this again. So
anytime, man.
Yeah, it'd be cool to. We'll have to look into putting this. Send me the video, Jonathan, and we'll put it up in clips too.
Yeah,
Here's Samuel's origination story. Here's our thoughts on women training jiu-jitsu, and put it up as clips too.
I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. So, Joe, I have maybe just one more thing to ask before we go. Joe, do you have anything else? We'll save the modern jiu-jitsu social media game conversation for later.
No, that's it for now. I learned a lot, man. This was cool. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the last thing I'll say before we go, Sam, is if you could just and you've kind of alluded to this a little bit, but it was it was several things, and it was a little bit more broad. If you had just, 20 seconds to tell the aspiring or new gym owner, hey man, this is how you do it. This is what you need to do. 2 sentences. What would you say?
2 sentences. I would say, make sure, be unashamedly in love with the idea of being a coach, right? Be just want to be a coach, feel like you're called to do it, be unashamedly in love with it, because man, that will manifest itself in positive ways throughout more than anything. And then the second thing I would say is get a couple of mentors, find 1 or 2 people that you can have a relationship with. And I alluded to this earlier, and it's really key. It's not just about finding somebody who has a gym that you want, but you have to have a good enough relationship where they can talk to you and you can talk to them and you guys can communicate back and forth, right? You need both of those things. That they have to be able to tell you good stuff, bad stuff. Those would be the two things that I would say. And if you can do those two things, man, then you'll find a way to be successful.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So, yeah, love coaching and find mentors. Right.
Yep.
So, okay, well, we'll send out an invite for another meeting because we had a few questions we didn't get to.
Okay.
And we'll try to do this again real soon. This was awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime, man. Like, we already have a relationship, and man, like I said, man, your family's great, man. Love you and your family. Joe, man, it's really nice to meet you, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Next time at a tournament, I'm definitely going to come up to you, man. And if I'm in Buckhead, I'm going to get some training in.
Come down, man. You guys are welcome anytime, man. And please, just come up when we're at a tournament. Come hang out with us, man. We got plenty of space, man. Please. It'd be awesome.
We'll do it. We'll do it. All right, guys. Well, until next time, we appreciate it. And we'll be in touch soon. Awesome. Thank you.